Logan Stanley hasn't gotten into too many games this year. I don't know if they're going to have to move someone or what.
Yeah. This is the time to do it in advance of the trade deadline when others aren't necessarily making those moves at the last minute. I think they should make a move from their depth, but that's just me. We'll have to wait and see.
We will see. Okay, let's move from the ice to baseball. Although he's anything but free, certainly. The Blue Jays continue to court baseball's top free agent. How are things looking this morning?
Well, the place where big deals often get done, the annual winter meetings, Pat, wrapped up last night, and still no word on where Shohei Otani will land. Wherever the Japanese star does land, we'll see its franchise permanently changed. That's what happens when you have the first pitching/hitting star the sport has seen since Babe Ruth. But we still don't know whether the Jays, Dodgers, Cubs, or some other mystery team will land Otani. There are opportunity costs, Pat, for waiting on him, though. The next best player available, and a player the Jays had coveted, was scooped up in a trade last night by the Yankees. Juan Soto, one of the best hitters in the game, whose offensive ability is worth about 5 extra wins a season. And now those wins are going to the Jays' bitter rivals in pinstripes. So what if Toronto, Pat, strikes out in its bid to woo Otani? With Soto gone, what is Toronto's plan C? It likely would be Cody Bellinger, who was worth an extra 4 wins to the Cubs last season. Impressive, but still only about half of what Otani would be worth. And by the way, Globe and Mail's Jeff Blair estimates that every extra win in the Toronto market represents about $9 million to the franchise.
Really?
Yeah. So you do the math, and you realize why, in a long-term deal, the Jays could offer Otani a contract approaching $1 billion Canadian. Wow. You factor in his global marketability, and the Jays might even in the end consider that contract as steal, believe it or not. So one thing we do know, Otani remains plan A, and by a long, long stretch.
Apparently he likes Toronto.
Well,
So-
what do we really know? I mean, he
That's what I'm
lives
hearing
in
in the media
Seattle.
frenzy
He's not
around
signing
this,
with the
yeah.
Mariners. I mean, there's always ways to frame it so it looks good on the Blue Jays, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay, finally, some interesting developments around the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. What is happening there?
Yeah, with lacrosse being added to those games, Pat, the group of people who invented the sport would like an invitation to them. The Haudenosaunee would like to participate in the Olympics and represent themselves there. To that end, they got a major endorsement yesterday from U.S. President Joe Biden.
And the Six Nations team asked to compete under its own tribal flag. And today, I'm announcing my support for that request. Their ancestors invented the game. They perfected it for a millennia. Their circumstances are unique, and they should be granted an exception to field their own team at the Olympics.
The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Pat, is a group of indigenous peoples comprised of the Mohawks, Seneca, Tuscarora, Oneida, Onondaga, as well as the Cayugas. The Confederacy has been able to compete in the World Lacrosse Championships dating back to 1990, but since they aren't obviously a country of their own, the road to the Olympics could be a long one. That said, the IOC does honor territories like Puerto Rico, so there is precedent, and in this case, a president as well, backing them.
A bit of a heavy endorsement there. That's good.
Yeah,
Seems to make
hurt.
common
That's
sense.
for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, I would think so.
Thanks, Scott. Enjoy your Friday Junior.
You too, Pat.
Scott Regier at the National Sports Desk. We are coming up to news at the bottom of the hour. Again, coming up just after the news, we're going to hear a nice story. Winnipeg Boys Choir is celebrating the season with 2 holiday concerts. We've stopped by the rehearsal. We're going to hear some of those voices and what they love about singing. The time right now is 7:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we've lost a degree. It is now 1. Mostly cloudy, continuing mild in Winnipeg today with a high of 5. A man accused of killing 4 people in Winnipeg last month has a history of psychotic episodes. That's according to a pre-sentencing report from an unrelated assault 2 years ago. Autumn Beardy is a longtime friend of Jamie Randy Felix. She says Felix has a seizure disorder and struggles with substance use, leading to manic episodes, which she says are the polar opposite of the positive things in his life.
He's tried so many times to get better. He's tried so many times to be productive and have a stable life and have a clean life and trying to heal.
Felix was charged last week with 4 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder in connection with that November 26th shooting at a Langside rooming house. We're going to hear more on this story with CBC reporter Caitlin Garlick joining Pat right here on Information Radio in the next half hour. A once homeless man who built an elaborate shack near Omans Creek, near Polo Park, is now adjusting to life indoors. Bill Pajek has been living in a Fort Rouge apartment building for a little more than 2 weeks now. Workers at St. Boniface Street Links helped Pajek get the apartment after CBC News told his story. Pajek says that led to an outpouring of support and donations.
Within 2 days, my whole life changed. Not just had an apartment, but I had furniture, and everything around me pretty much came from all the people that helped me. There's other people out there that need help. Find a way to get involved, find a way to reach out and help.
Pajek lost his job and housing because of health problems, including diabetes and Graves' disease. He hopes one day to move out to a farm where he and other people who have experienced homelessness can support themselves. Well, even though the opposition is fierce, an overnight drop-in shelter in Brandon has been given the green light. It will open in the International Gospel Christian Ministries. That's in a residential area. Many people in that area spoke against the location at yesterday's Brandon Planning Commission meeting, many citing safety concerns. Adeline Jones lives near the shelter's new space.
I know they're trying to do a nice thing, but it's putting our property value down, and we know it. And I know people need help. But when the businessmen downtown turn a shelter down, why would they put it in our residence?
Brandon Neighbourhood Renewal Corporation expects the shelter to open in about 2 weeks. A pedestrian is in critical condition this morning after being hit by a car last night. Winnipeg police say it happened around 6 in the evening at Main and Armstrong, just south of Kildonan Park. Police say the driver was not hurt. The area there is all clear this morning. Food prices will keep rising in 2024, according to the latest food price report. It predicts an increase of anywhere from 2 to 4.5%. That means a family of 4 can expect to spend about $700 more on food next year than they did this year. The report also points out, on average, Canadians had fewer restaurant meals last year compared to 2022 and expects to see that trend continue into the new year. Military aircraft from Jordan are carrying out a humanitarian operation over Gaza. Planes taking off from Amman on their way to dropping medical aid into the Palestinian territory. After weeks of Israeli airstrikes and only a trickle of aid trucks able to cross into Gaza, hospitals are low on fuel and overwhelmed with casualties. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has invoked a rarely used clause in the UN Charter. It allows him to warn the Security Council the Hamas war with Israel may aggravate existing threats to international peace and security. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, Winnipeggers are doing something they rarely do in December.
December in Winnipeg. Who needs Mexico?
Jim Malloy doesn't, swinging his clubs there at Shooters Family Golf Center in Winnipeg. Shooters opened its driving range yesterday as the temperature rose to 6 degrees. Malloy was quick to dig out his clubs.
I was hoping to get 9 holes in today, but when I phoned, they said no, just the driving range. I said, well, that'll do. It's December.
The owner of Shooters says he might open the course today. CBC meteorologist John Sauter forecasting a high today of 5 degrees. Now get out and enjoy it, because all good things must end, and an Alberta Clipper is on its way, bringing snowfall warnings to parts of the north, western Manitoba and the Interlake. But yesterday was remarkable. 7 warm weather records were broken. Kyle McCauley at Environment Canada says the hottest spot in Manitoba yesterday was McCreary at 11.2 degrees. It broke a record set in 2015. And at 10.1 degrees, Deerwood also broke a record, along with Carberry and Emerson, both around 9 degrees yesterday. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, I think that's the quote of the morning. Who needs Mexico? We'll ask that gentleman tomorrow and Saturday.
Yes, everything's got to change.
Yeah, because we could have Abby Adeyemi. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi is here to tell us more about what's coming from the weather, but we could have 5 to 7 centimeters on the ground here in Winnipeg by Saturday morning, according to John Sauter. So what do you have for us, Abby?
That's true, Pat. Who needs Mexico just for today? But tomorrow, I guess it's going to be winter wonderland. Currently in Winnipeg, we are at 1, mainly cloudy this morning. We'll be heading to a high of 5. Brandon is at 0. It's going to be having a mix of sun and cloud, and you'll be heading to a high of 5 also. Thompson is at minus 13, heading to a high of 5 rather. And then Churchill is at 3, minus 3. Dauphin at 1. Gimli's is actually 1, Dauphin 1. Morris is currently at minus 2 this morning. Modern Winkler is at minus 2. Steinberg is at minus 1. The Power is at minus 1, and Verdun is currently 0. And in traffic there, I was just trying to monitor the traffic chat there. I got a call from Mike. He said westbound Notre Dame and McPhillips is down to 1 lane because of the construction happening there. So you might be expecting some delays along that axis. Also, another one I got this morning is westbound corridor in between Guelph and Wilton. The curb lane is being walked on because definitely some gas walk happening there. And southbound Dawson Road from Dougal to Panet, curb lane, there's also walk going on there for some sewer walk. So you'll be expecting delays along that axis. But currently in Winnipeg, we're at 1. It's still a beautiful day. If you see anything in traffic, let us know. 788-3093.
Thanks, Abby. So Abby Adeyemi is in for me. I'm in for Marcy. Marcy has a little bit of a holiday, so we're pleased that she gets some time off. And always love sitting in here for Marcy when I'm able to. And May McKillop is behind the glass this morning for Abby, making sure we're on the air. And Travis and Jenna are monitoring and making sure we're up on our Manitoba YouTube page. So check us out there if you haven't. We're doing a soft launch now. We're going to hit it hard in January. But yes, you can watch our radio show on CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. We are at 22 minutes before 8 o'clock right now, 7:38. Up next on the show, the sounds of beautiful voices fill the halls of Crescent Fort Rouge United Church every Tuesday evening. It's where the Winnipeg Boys Choir practices each week. The choir is made up of 2 separate choruses. The treble chorus for the younger boys, whose voices might not have changed yet, while the senior chorus is for the older boys. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal was at the church this week as choir members were rehearsing for 2 upcoming holiday shows. She listened in as the treble chorus stood up on the risers to sing some holiday classics.
Hi, I'm Nathaniel Mercer. I'm 10 years old, and I am a part of the Winnipeg Boys Choir.
What's your favorite part about being part of the choir?
The singing, obviously, and also the way that they do the fun skits almost. For example, last year we did, at the end of one of our songs, some of us fell over.
You fell over? What happened?
We didn't really get hurt. It was just a part of the show kind of thing.
It sounds like you were having fun.
Yes, a lot of fun.
So I've been listening to you rehearse, and you sound beautiful. What's going to be happening at this holiday concert?
We're going to be performing a lot of Christmas songs, and we might have another skit. We might have another one on one of our songs to make the audience laugh. I'm pretty sure that happens every single concert.
What got you interested in singing?
I heard the Winnipeg Boys Choir, and I thought it sounded really good. And then my mom said that I might be good enough to be in the Winnipeg Boys Choir. So then last concert they said they were looking for more boys, so I decided I might as well audition, and I got in.
Congratulations. So what's it like for you when you're on stage performing for an audience?
It makes me feel very pleased if the audience likes the music and also the jokes.
You love the jokes. I love that emphasis on the humor now, because it sounds like you're having so much fun.
Yes, I am having a lot of fun. I'm glad I joined the Winnipeg Boys Choir.
Hello, my name is Nicolino Giancola. I am 10 and I'm a member of the Winnipeg Boys Choir.
How long have you been a member, Nicolino?
I've been a member of the Winnipeg Boys Choir for about a year and a half.
What made you want to be part of this?
Well, my mom told me about this and I thought this would be fun, and it turned out pretty good and I got in.
What's been your favorite part about being part of the choir?
Probably the singing and just having fun with everybody.
Now, just like Nathaniel said, there's a lot of fun, because you seem very serious on stage. Tell me about the fun.
Well, the fun bit of this is we could sing, and then we kind of talk about it, and then it's all nice and fun because everyone's all happy.
What songs have you been practicing?
Oh, we've been practicing a song called Ding Dong Merrily on High this bleak winter, and we're also practicing a Nutcracker song that we're going to be in.
What's the experience like for you when you're singing for an audience?
It's kind of anxious, but it's also joyful at the same time.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Boys. I'm Artistic Director of the Winnipeg Boys Choir. We are busy getting ready to celebrate the season with Christmas concerts and holiday concerts. On Tuesday, December 12th, we have our Winnipeg Boys Choir concert titled Christmas with the Boys. That's here at our home church, Crescent Fort Rouge United. And we're really gearing up, too, for our first ever collaboration with the Virtuosi concert series in Winnipeg, which is super exciting. And their concert is on Sunday, December 10th at 2:30 at Westworth United Church. So we're busy.
How have the rehearsals been going?
They've been going well. We've given the boys a lot of challenges with music in terms of the volume of the rep and even the difficulty of some of the rep, because they're capable and it's thrilling to listen to for the audience. And so I think we are pleasantly working away, getting ready.
Well, it's interesting because I'm hearing them rehearse and they sound so lovely. And then you interrupted and you said something and you said, "Oh, you sung a little bit," said like this, and then they completely changed and they sounded even better. How has it been guiding them?
Oh, it is a privilege. It is. I'm super fortunate, blessed, lucky, all of the above, to do what I do for a living. And I've worked with this choir for 25 years. This is my 25th season with the boys' choir. And, you know, from the beginning to now, it is true that these boys are responsive to the instruction that's given, to the challenges thrown at them. They come with a shared love of singing, wanting a place to make friendships, have valuable experiences, and a result of that, you know, I get to stand in front and guide them and hear the magic that happens when they're so, you know, so willing to take my lead and instruction.
The boys were telling me how, you know, they're up there, they're so serious singing, but they said the best part is the fun they have because they get to do some really fun things.
Yes, well, while we're chatting, they're working on some movement to a fun song called Christmas Chopsticks. And I think you heard them rehearsing a beautiful arrangement of Ding Dong Merrily on High before. The special thing about this Christmas concert is for the first time, I think since I've been here, we are having, I think it's the second time brass quintet, but the first time we are inviting the Winnipeg Brass Quintet to be our guest artists. So they'll be joining us on a couple of tunes. They'll be playing some beautiful music and some celebratory fun music on their own. Lottie Ensbraun will be joining us on the organ. So I think when a person comes to our concert on the 12th, they will walk into a beautiful building, Crescent Fort Rouge United Church, see lots of lights and warmth, feel lots of warmth, and then hear a wide variety of music that lifts their spirits. And they'll get to sing. We're going to sing 3 audience carols with soaring descants, and that always seems to be a highlight for at least a few people in the crowd. If people are looking at the 2 different concerts, Sunday the 10th and Tuesday the 12th, and thinking they have to decide between the 2, let me assure them that they don't. The decision to make is to go to both because there are different programs at each. And of course, the textures and sounds of organ and brass with choir at our own on December 12th, and then string quartet and string soloists with Monica Husman on the 10th provide 2 very different but equally satisfying, snapshots of this season that people would love.
That was CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal at Crescent Fort Rouge United Church here in Winnipeg, listening to the Winnipeg Boys Choir, and they were rehearsing ahead of some upcoming shows. And you can see the choir on Saturday at the Virtuosi Concert Winter with You, featuring soprano Monica Husman. That's at Westworth United Church. Christmas with the Boys is happening on Tuesday at Crescent Fort Rouge United Church. Tomorrow on the show, this is a legacy that's going strong after nearly 100 years. We're going to hear about some of the history of the Winnipeg Boys Choir and meet some of the alumni who've returned to share their love of singing.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
7:47, you are listening to Information Radio. It's Pat in for Marcy on this Thursday morning. Anything you see in the commute to let us know about for your drive, 788-3093. Abby is standing by to take your calls. We're still about 20 minutes away from sunrise. Sunrise 8:11 this morning. Sunsets at 4:28. 3 weeks from now, those days are going to be getting a little longer. I'm happy about that. We like sunlight here in the morning on Information Radio, so these dark days are certainly very long, but that is changing in a few weeks. It is 1 on the outside right now, on the way to a high of 5 today. Now, up next on the show, we're learning more about the man charged in a deadly multiple shooting in Winnipeg recently that killed 4 people and sent another man to hospital. 32-year-old Jamie Randy Felix was charged last week with 4 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The deadly shooting claimed the lives of Melilik Lasari Lesakel, Dylan Maxwell Lavallee, and sisters Crystal Shannon Beardy and Stephanie Amanda Beardy. That happened in the early hours of November 26th. A 55-year-old man who was shot remains in serious condition in hospital. Now, court records show the man charged in the shooting has a history of psychotic episodes. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck has read through those documents and talked to someone who knows Felix, and she's here now in studio. And just a warning, some of the details in the story might be distressing to listeners. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what have you learned so far about Jamie Randy Felix?
So one thing, Pat, that came up both in looking through those court records you mentioned and also talking to someone who knows him is that this is someone who really has struggled with mental health and addictions over the years. That includes a history of psychotic episodes, as you mentioned, linked to seizures and substance abuse. In a pre-sentence report that was prepared earlier this year in an unrelated incident, it said that those episodes ended in hospitalization for him more than once, including one incident in March of last year when he attempted suicide while in a psychotic state. That same report also said that he was diagnosed with alcohol use disorder and depression, and that he occasionally said he used cocaine while on an alcohol binge. I also talked to someone who's been friends with Felix for about a decade. Her name's Autumn Beardy. She said that she was close friends both with the accused and with his twin brother, who was murdered in 2012. Beardy said Felix really struggled after that death, and he was just never able to get the help he needed.
Everything either took too long, or I think he really just slipped through the cracks, because I know that it's hard to get the right diagnosis or a diagnosis by somebody who cares, or it's just very hard when you're not mentally well and you're not completely stable.
So, Caitlin, what about his addictions? Was he ever able to get any help for them?
Sort of. So that pre-sentence report I mentioned said that he did get into a residential addictions treatment program at the end of last year, but he ended up leaving for a medical appointment one day and just didn't come back. The report said when he did call shortly after wanting to get back in, he said he was told he'd have to show commitment to the program and then go back through the regular intake process again. That friend who I spoke to earlier, Autumn Beardy, said that December was always a really hard time for him because that was when the birthday he shared with his brother is. She said he really continued to struggle to find mental health supports and said he was always trying to get better, including completing an addictions program in Peguas First Nations this summer, which was the last time she saw him. She also said he was always really working to try to make a difference in his community, and that included 11 years he served with the Canadian Armed Forces and his work with Strength in the Circle, which was a support group for young Indigenous men in Winnipeg. She said all that really stood in stark contrast to when he would slip back into what she called that dark place he went to.
Like he's got really, really risky during his down and out manic phases, and which would be polar opposite from what he was doing in his life, what he was achieving, like running men's groups or running physical health groups for men. And he always took a job, or he always took a specialty and tried to go to school for something that helped people. It was always like community outreach. He never had a stable home. He never had he was transient, like he was homeless a lot of the time, and he always wanted to continue to keep giving to other people, even though he didn't come from a place of having anything.
Now, Caitlin, you also mentioned a pre-sentence report earlier, which means Felix has been convicted of a crime before. What does his record look like?
So there actually isn't much. Before this shooting that he's charged in now, there was just one incident, and that was an assault at a party back in 2021. The pre-sentence report that was prepared earlier this year connected to that incident said that Felix was charged after a drunk man fell down a flight of stairs in an apartment during what the report called a scuffle, as Felix and another man tried to remove the drunk man from the party. Court heard that Felix was the only one who really took any responsibility for the incident, turning himself into police and giving a full statement about his involvement. A lawyer who spoke about him in court in that incident described him as someone who made really positive contributions to his community and seemed to be on the right track, but just really struggled with addictions. Felix ended up pleading guilty to assault causing bodily harm, and he was given a 2-year suspended sentence in that incident along with supervised probation.
Okay, so you also said Felix had a brother who was killed. Did you learn anything about the rest of his family?
His mom actually talked a little bit about him for that pre-sentence report I mentioned. She was also pretty concerned about his drug use, and she said she really wasn't sure what she thought should happen to him as a consequence for that assault that he pleaded guilty to. She said, sometimes I want him to go to jail because he has to learn about his actions, but on the other hand, she said he needs treatment because he's still dealing with his addictions. His mom also said she left her son's father when the twins were about 3 years old, but the boys later ended up being raised by their father from the ages of about 5 to 10, something the mom said she later regretted. The report said that Felix described being, quote, exposed to the gang lifestyle throughout his childhood.
So what happens now?
Well, Pat, for those who lost a loved one in the shooting, the grieving process really has just begun, with funerals and vigils happening in recent days and roses and candles that have been left on the steps of the place where they were killed. It's still unclear what recovery will be like for the man who's still in hospital. Police have still only said his condition is listed as serious, and as for Felix, he'll be back in court next week.
Thanks for this, Caitlin.
You're welcome.
Caitlin Gowerluck is a reporter with CBC Manitoba. You can read more on this story on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. We are just a few minutes away from news headlines. You are listening to Information Radio on this Friday morning. Thanks for making us a part of your morning. It's Pat in for Marcy. And we're off to a good start to the day from a temperature point of view. We're 1 right now on the way to a 5. It's going to be a calm day, but we're going to see rain late this afternoon, changing to wet snow into tomorrow morning. This time tomorrow will be a little bit of a messy commute. Before we get to those news headlines, let's have a little bit of music, shall we? This is from Steph Green, and this is called Kettle Valley. Valley. Her new album is called Lore, and if that's the Kettle Valley I know, it's the old rail line out in Kelowna that is now one of the most amazing bike paths in the entire country, where you ride over the trestle bridges and through the mountains. It is absolutely gorgeous. We are at 3 minutes before 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening in news headlines. Here's Heather Wells.
Good morning. A once homeless man who built an elaborate shack near Omans Creek near Polo Park is now adjusting to life indoors. Bill Paycheck has been living in a Fort Rouge apartment building for a little more than 2 weeks now. Workers at St. Boniface Street Links helped him get the apartment, and Paycheck says it's led to an outpouring of support and donations. We're going to hear about his future plans coming up, and it's not a sound you normally hear in Winnipeg in December. Shooters Family Golf Center opened its driving range as temperatures rose to 6 yesterday. 7 warm temperature records were broken in southern Manitoba yesterday, but as Pat has been saying, by tomorrow, golf will just be a memory thanks to an Alberta clipper bringing some snow and cold temperatures our way. Your next local news coming up at 8:30.
And that thwack of the golf ball is going to be replaced by the sound of shoveling. In the next couple of days. That's right, with the wet snow. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Coming up in the next half hour of Information Radio, the challenges of co-parenting during the holiday season. At 8:10, we're going to hear from an expert on how families dealing with separation or divorce can still have a happy holiday season. That is coming up after World Report, which is at the top of the clock. We are 1 on the way to 5. It's a dry commute today. It won't be tomorrow. Anything you see on the commute to let us know about that's hampering your commute, 788-3093 is the traffic and commuter line. Abby is standing by to take your calls. You're listening to Information Radio. Thank you for making us a part of your morning. World Report is coming up in 1 minute.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
When the Canadian poet Bradley Peters discovered sonnets, he knew it would be the perfect form to write about his experience with incarceration. Bradley will tell you why that is and how they shaped his new collection of poetry, Sonnets from a Cell.
It really helped me kind of access that world that I hadn't been writing about.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Math scores are dropping for Canadian students, and some teachers and mathematicians say that's in part because we're teaching the subject wrong. Why we need to show the wonder and creativity in numbers and calculations, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. The federal government is unveiling another prong of Canada's climate policy later this morning, and this one will go after carbon emitters in the oil and gas industry. The CBC's David Thurton tells us what to expect.
Prime Minister said we would announce before Christmas, and I would expect that you should see something quite soon.
Soon, Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says. How about today? Sources tell CBC News Canadians will learn what's inside the government's plan to cap oil and gas emissions this morning, bringing emissions in line with the country's 2030 climate targets, then net zero by 2050. A source not authorized to speak publicly says it will be enforced through a cap and trade system, a system that allows big emitters to buy and trade emissions permits. The goal, lower emissions. The Alberta government, though, doesn't see it that way. Premier Daniel Smith.
When you have an emissions cap that is unachievable, too short a time frame, it is a de facto production cap, and we will fight that.
Smith is in Dubai for the UN Climate Summit, COP28, where countries are pledging to limit emissions and global warming. Canada's cap, others say, is not only necessary to limit temperature rises, but is overdue. Alex Cool-Fergus with the Climate Action Network Canada says today's announcement needs to turn into regulations ASAP.
Time is ticking here, so this has to be the government's #1 priority when they get back from winter break.
The government intends to table regulations in the spring or summer. The fear is without binding rules before the next election, a change in government could easily kill the idea of an emissions cap. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the Prime Minister has gone too far with his price on pollution, and he's vowing to get Canadians relief from the carbon tax one way or another. even if it means working through the holidays. Let's bring in Kate McKenna from our Parliamentary Bureau. Kate, it looks like the House of Commons could be caught up in a 24-hour voting marathon today. What exactly are the Conservatives threatening to do here?
Well, Pierre Poilievre says he's going to grind the business of Parliament to a halt. Not only are members of Parliament expected to spend the next full day voting, the Conservatives have vowed to introduce thousands of amendments to bills and at committee. They intend to hold up the passing of legislation, including the government's fall economic statement, which calls for more than $20 billion more in spending over the next 6 years. It's a pressure tactic. Lots of MPs want to be in their ridings over the holidays with their families, doing local events. Poilievre says his goal is to make Parliament sit deep into December.
Well, I've got news for Justin Trudeau. You've ruined Christmas for Canadians. Common sense Conservatives are going to ruin your vacation as well.
Kate, why are they doing this?
Well, the Conservatives have a few demands, all centered around what's becoming their signature policy, which is calling for the end of the carbon pricing. Poilievre says he'll call this down if they make 3 additional exemptions. They want the carbon tax lifted from all home heating fuel. They want all First Nations to be exempt. And they want a Conservative private members bill aimed at lifting the tax on some farm activities to be passed unamended. Liberal House Leader Karina Gould calls the move a stunt.
What he is doing is disrespectful not just to our democratic institutions, but it's disrespectful to Canadians. And quite frankly, he should be ashamed of what he's doing.
Now, it's unlikely the government will acquiesce to these demands. The Prime Minister has said no more carve-outs on carbon pricing are coming, but it's clear the Conservatives will continue hammering them on this issue.
The CBC's Kate McKenna in Ottawa. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Jordan's military aircraft are conducting a humanitarian operation over Gaza. They're dropping medical aid by air into the Palestinian territory. After weeks of Palestinian airstrikes and only a trickle of aid trucks able to cross into Gaza, hospitals are low on fuel and overwhelmed with casualties. Here's what IDF spokesperson Jonathan Conricus told Deutsche Welle.
We are going to dismantle Hamas and make sure that the atrocities of October the 7th never happen again. That Israeli civilians will not be butchered in their homes and burnt and raped and pillaged, and that the Israeli civilians will not be taken hostage.
Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General is doing something rarely done before to try and push for a ceasefire. Antonio Guterres has invoked a clause in the UN Charter. It allows him to warn the Security Council that the Israel-Hamas war may aggravate existing threats to international peace and security. Police in Nevada are trying to learn more about the shooter who killed 3 people on a Las Vegas University campus. Heavily armed officers surrounded the suspect's residence last night. They were there to search the building. One law enforcement official says that the gunman was a professor who wanted to work at the university but then didn't get the job. He was killed in a shootout with police shortly after he opened fire at the University of Nevada. 3 people were killed. A 4th is in critical but stable condition. 4 Republican presidential contenders are this morning taking stock of their debate performance. The final GOP showdown happened in Alabama last night before primaries begin in the new year. Let's bring in the CBC's Richard Madden in our Washington bureau, who watched it all unfold. What are your takeaways, Richard?
Yeah, the big takeaway is Nikki Haley is having a moment. She's surging in polls, enthusiasm, and donors, and that's a big change from a few months ago when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis appeared to have that advantage. But now he's trailing her in support, so it was notable and quite telling how quickly he went after her.
And the fact of the matter is, we know from her history, Nikki will cave to those big donors when it counts.
In terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them, but I'm not going to sit there and deny.
Now, the 4 competitors sparred on immigration, culture war issues, and conflicts overseas, mostly attacking each other while avoiding direct criticism of the party's frontrunner, Donald Trump, who skipped the debate once again. Now, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has built his campaign as an anti-Trumper and accused DeSantis of dodging direct questions if Trump was fit for office.
The question was very direct. Is he fit to be president or isn't he? The rest of the speech is interesting, but completely non-responsive.
Now, for his part, Trump held a private fundraiser in Florida. His rivals are hoping last night's debate in Tuscaloosa would give them a bounce of momentum to catch up to him in support.
Richard, this was the 4th and final debate before the primaries start early next year. Where do the candidates stand?
Now, Trump is far and away the clear frontrunner. Polls show him 20, 30 points ahead of his nearest competitor, Nikki Haley. So we're likely going to see candidates dropping out or suspending their campaigns once primary season starts. DeSantis, he's banking on a strong showing in Iowa. So if he loses there in January, he has some soul-searching to do. Chris Christie, who's popular in New Hampshire, needs to dominate there or else his path fizzles. So we'll really start to see the field narrowing in the next few months. But as I said at the outset, Nikki Haley's having a moment. It's a long shot, but momentum can have some surprising outcomes.
Yeah, they call it Big Mo in politics. CBC's Richard Madden reporting from Washington. Thanks, Richard.
You're welcome.
The seventh round of voting to elect the Assembly of First Nations' next national chief will happen later today. Delegates were not able to choose their next leader yesterday as expected. None of the 6 candidates received the 60% of the vote required to win. Cindy Woodhouse, the AFN regional chief for Manitoba, and Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations vice chief David Pratt remain on the ballot. Voting resumes at 11 a.m. Eastern this morning. People in the Northwest Territories will find out who their next premier is today. 4 people are hoping they'll get the job. As Juanita Taylor tells us, their fate is in the hands of their fellow MLAs.
It's part of a consensus-style government only seen in the Northwest Territories and in Nunavut. With no political parties, 19 members of the Legislative Assembly will make a big decision for the entire territory, selecting their premier. 4 candidates from the newly elected territorial government are in the running, each giving a 20-minute speech in the Legislative Assembly last week, vying for the top job. Sean Dean, a retired bureaucrat after 3 decades, says there are a lot of conversations amongst members in the hallways before voting day.
Talking about 19 people who, in some cases, never met before, never worked together before. They need to get to know each other, and that takes some time, and it takes multiple interactions. It's not just what you see on the floor of the House.
But Yellowknife resident Steve Ellis wants to see a more transparent way of selecting a premier.
I think we are owed a little more information about who our candidates are, and a little more opportunity to advise our MLAs on who they should be voting for.
The Speaker and Cabinet will also get selected today. Candidates for premiership include Shane Thompson, Caroline Wozniak, R.J. Simpson, and Kieran Testart. Voting by secret ballot will take place at 10 a.m. Mountain Time in Yellowknife. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, if you ever miss World Report, you can hear it anytime, anywhere, on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Good morning, Winnipeg. You're listening to Information Radio for this Thursday, December 7th. It's Pat Kanuga in for Marcy Markusa. Coming up in this half hour of the show, do you know where your Christmas packages are? We're talking about package theft. We'll hear from someone who's been tracking how quickly it's become a major problem. Yes, the problem of porch pirates. That's coming up in about 15 minutes here on the show. Up first this half hour, though, parenting over the holidays can be tough, and co-parenting can be even tougher. We're going to speak with a lawyer about the challenges that separated parents may have at this time of year and learn some tips to ensure that all families have a happy holiday season. That's coming up in just a few minutes here on Information Radio. You're listening to us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, maybe the CBC Listen app, or our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday morning. But at 8:11 on the dot, let's go to the CBC Newsroom and news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. A man accused of killing 4 people in a Langside rooming house had a history of psychotic episodes. That's according to court documents related to an unrelated assault charge against Jamie Randy Felix. His longtime friend, Autumn Beardy, says Felix has a seizure disorder and struggles with substance abuse, which makes his manic episodes even worse. We're going to hear more from her. Even though the opposition is fierce, an overnight drop-in shelter in Brandon's been given the go-ahead to open. It's going to be in the International Gospel Christian Ministries, a residential area. Many people in that area spoke against the location yesterday at a meeting, citing safety concerns and the impact on property values. We'll hear more about it in our next news at 8:30.
Thanks very much, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
It is a gray morning out there, but a little bit of sun poking through in the southern sky that I can see. There's some orangey skies here in the downtown. We are at the corner of Portage and Spence in downtown Winnipeg, Studio 15 here at the CBC building. So thank you for joining us. Abby Adiemi is doing my job this morning while I'm in for Marcy, and he is here with weather and traffic.
Yep. Good morning once again, Pat. And it's sunrise time according to Environment Canada, but it's gray out there.
8:11, yes.
It's just hiding behind the clouds, but definitely the sun is up there somewhere hiding. In Winnipeg currently, we are at 1. It's going to be a mainly cloudy day, just as you've heard. We'll be having the fog patches dissipating this morning, and then we'll be heading to a high of 5. Tonight, though, it's still going to remain cloudy, but expect that freezing rain before tomorrow morning, and then we'll be dipping down to 0. And, you know, as we've been talking about since the show started, we'll be expecting periods of rain or snow changing sometime tomorrow, and we'll be getting that freezing rain also tomorrow morning, which will be amounting to about 2 to 4 centimeters tomorrow. Good morning, Brandon. How are you doing? You're currently at -1, a mix of sun and cloud for you this morning, and then it's going to be cloudy throughout the afternoon period. You have fog this morning. You'll be heading to a high of 5. The wind chill out there feels like -7 this morning, and tonight in Brandon will be cloudy, so you might not be seeing you might not be catching the moon tonight, but the snow will be beginning near midnight for you, and also you'll be having that risk of freezing rain after midnight. And the local snow forecast for Brandon says you should be expecting about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, and you dip down to a low of -1. Good morning, Thompson. You are at 11, increasing cloudiness. You get fog this morning also. Your wind chill will be feeling like -15, and you'll be heading to a high of -5 today. This afternoon, you'll definitely drop to -7, and tonight will be cloudy, low -8 in Thompson.
I just opened the blind. I let the light shine in. It's a lot clearer than I thought it was.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the sun is actually peeking out, so I can see reflections on the side of my favorite building just right at the skyscraper down there. I can see the sun reflect on the side, so that's a good sign for today.
Not a bad-looking morning. And the commute, it's dry today. It won't be tomorrow, though.
Yeah, dry commute today. And talking about commuting, this time tomorrow you should be expecting, there's going to be like...
wet snow and lots of yuckiness.
Yuckiness, and for those on the highway, blowing snow.
Yeah,
so
that's
visibility
right.
will be hampered tomorrow if you're on the highway. We got a snowfall warning for tomorrow for Dauphin, Russell, Roblin, Winnipeg says, Riding Mountain, Swan River, Dark Mountain. You'll be expecting up to about 10 to 15 centimeters of snow from tonight into tomorrow. And like we said, blowing snow will be accumulating on the highway, so you need to take extra care. And talking about roads now, we got a call from Mike earlier. He said Notre Dame and Mark Phillips, it's down to 1 lane because of the construction at the lights. He said they're working on some gas lines at that axis, so you need to exercise some patience at that axis.
788-3093 is the traffic line.
Correct.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
It is 8:15, coming up on 8:16 actually, and the holiday season can be stressful for everyone. For some families, this season may be a bit different because of co-parenting after a separation or divorce. A quarter to a third of kids in Canada bounce between 2 different households. Our next guest has some advice for parents navigating co-parenting during the holiday season. Rebecca Bromwich is an affiliated researcher in the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba, and she joins us on Zoom. Good morning, Rebecca. Nice to have you along with us.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So why did you want to look into this to start off?
Well, I've been doing research into co-parent communication for a number of years. I had a grant from the Law Foundation of Ontario, specifically looking at technological apps that are being used for co-parents to communicate. But the reason it became so relevant is when I started practicing law over 20 years ago, it was an outlier situation. Maybe in about 15% of cases, that both parents would continue to be meaningfully involved in decision making and setting up a household for children after a separation or divorce. That has changed. We've had a radical paradigm shift in this country, all across this country, and it's been formalized in the Divorce Act with respect to. It's funny because my kids are just heading off to school. So everything's crazy. So this is very appropriate.
It's okay. That was just a cell phone that we heard there. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's the morning rush. It's great. I love it.
The morning rush. It's great. And so, but the Divorce Act in 2019 was actually amended to make clear that that there's no longer custody and access. Rather, the concept is parenting time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is normal, as you identified when you did that opener, that between a half and a third of Canadian kids are now living in two households. And many of you who are watching or listening may be in that situation, and maybe for the first time. And it's always stressful, never easy, because the reason that you split from someone was often because you didn't want to talk to them.
And didn't get
but
along.
What we ended up doing is talking to them. It is quite frequent and common that parents who are separated or divorced end up having to communicate daily. And so there are technological ways to support this, but it becomes more escalated as the holiday season approaches.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the challenges that people might encounter when it comes to co-parenting during the holidays. What are they?
Well, I mean, there are going to be conflicting traditions, right? And there's going to be an opportunity for whatever argument or disagreement there is. And I'm not a mental health expert, but it can be a trigger for other aspects of the conflict. So whatever is still kind of people are still living out with respect to the conflict is something that can continue there. The other issue is it's difficult to get legal representation in terms of access to justice from a financial perspective. Up to 80% of litigants before the family courts are actually unrepresented. And so people are going into legal arguments without good representation often. And there's also a huge backlog in the family courts. So there is this big imperative that people try and address their circumstances proactively and early. And there are lots of ways to do that.
Well, what are some of the strategies then to do that in your mind?
Well, the first one would be start early, but of course today is the first day of Hanukkah and we're heading into Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a little late to start early. One of the proactive strategies would be to try and reach out to support whatever might be available in terms of support. So support that might be available could be a technological app. There are many of them. One's called Our Family Wizard. It's the most common one, but there are other ones, Two Home, Two Families. There are numerous technological apps, ways to communicate, to disaggregate the emotional content from the business content. You can also reach out to parenting coordinators, mediators, and other helping professionals, or just third parties. Having a clear view of what your goals are is important, but one thing that's helpful is to be flexible. Now, statistically speaking, it's important to note that the research shows that divorce and separation is not actually bad for children, for the outcomes for their lives. But what can be detrimental in the lives of children is actually the conflict between the parents. So that historical ideological notion of a broken home, the idea that your kids are going to be worse off because you're divorced or separated, that's not actually true statistically with respect to mental health and life outcomes for kids. But what is true is high levels of conflict can be harmful to the children. So it's much better if parents are able to proactively find strategies to problem solve.
Okay, so how important is organization in this? Do you drop a schedule and follow it and make sure that expectations are there, that sort of idea? What do you think about that?
Yes, it's very helpful to have a schedule. And that's where, and that's also the problem, is because the parents may have conflicting schedules. Right. So if you can schedule well in advance, it's useful. And if you are in the process of divorce or separation right now, it is important to note that things that seem like obscure and trivial details right now, if you're in a court proceeding or if you're negotiating a separation agreement, are actually not going to be obscure and trivial. So things like, where does the pickup or drop off take place? At what precise time? How is that facilitated? And on what days may seem like details you don't need in a separation agreement. But I assure you, the more detail you have, the clearer it is laid out, the less space there is for different interpretations or for argument.
Okay, so as you mentioned, Hanukkah starts today. We're still 2.5 weeks away from Christmas. But what conversations should parents be having with each other now to ensure that they have kind of a smooth holiday season?
Well, one of the conversations, depending on the age and stage of the children, it's appropriate to talk with the kids about your values, your traditions, and what's important to you, and also to try and stress and amplify how important it is and valuable it is for the kids to be involved with relatives on both sides of the family. And this may be the most challenging thing we do if we are divorced or separated parents, but to speak well of the other party and their family, and try and ensure that the children's best interests are at the forefront. One of the amendments to the Divorce Act in 2019 was to articulate that best interests phrase and standard actually in the legislation, to really stress that it's not parental conduct that's at the forefront here. It's the best interests of children going forward. And of course, getting support for ourselves individually, but really trying to be flexible and focus on what is really valuable and what are you really focused on. And the thing about when we head into the Christmas season, there's always that, concern about finances, and there's always that concern about purchasing things. But this is really any crisis, which, co-parenting can be, is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to focus in on what joy can be shared at the holiday season.
So, Rebecca, I've got about 90 seconds left here. I want to bring the kids into this. What conversation should parents have with the kids about the co-parenting holidays?
So I am not a mental health professional. I'm a legal professional. One of the things that's important is the kids never actually have the right to determine where they spend time. That is not, that is, and there's precedent from appellate courts indicating that. So kids can have their views and preferences taken into account. So it's really important that we don't say, hey, kids, where do you want to spend the holiday season?
Gotcha.
But it is important that kids' views and preferences are considered, and it's useful to reminisce and to reassure and affirm that their experiences are valid.
Okay, I have a last question for you. What is your most important message that you want to convey to families that are navigating this co-parenting this holiday season? What's the last thing you'll leave us with?
Well, it's kind of, I don't want to end on a negative note, but don't expect to rely too heavily on the courts. They're very overburdened and backlogged. Lawyers and legal professionals can help you. But interestingly enough, those people who are unrepresented are actually more likely to end up in court. People who have lawyers are less likely to end up in a court proceeding, more likely to negotiate. So it's worth making the investment of time proactively in retaining counsel or getting a social worker or mediator involved to do this proactively. The payoff will be beneficial in the long term.
And try and get along for the kids' sake, I guess, as well.
Well, that too.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah. Interesting stuff here.
Thank you.
Take care. So Rebecca Bromwich is she's an affiliated researcher in the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba. Do you have anything to tell us about your situation? I know it's a little bit personal, but if you have some tips on what's worked for you, 788-3205 is our listener line.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
It's wind and heat, fossil fuels, fire, floods. It's international and very Canadian.
Hi. How much snow have you got there?
Quite a bit. Laura Lynch guides you through the climate change crisis, the problems, and the solutions. What on Earth? Sunday morning at 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
We're coming up to, it is exactly 25 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're listening to Information Radio. It's Pat in for Marcy. The other day in my mailbox, I got a little card from Canada Post just giving me some tips about, how you can avoid porch pirates and theft and how to track your packages. So as the holidays approach, consumers are being warned about a relatively new concern. As I mentioned, porch pirates or stolen deliveries. Now, this kind of crime is growing as people shop online more and more. Professor Ben Stickle is a professor of criminal justice at Middle Tennessee State University who studies package theft. CBC's Portia Clark called him up and asked how big a problem it is these days.
Well, it seems to be growing quite a bit. We don't have great numbers or statistics on this, but from interviews that have been done and other sources, this seems to be an increasing crime as we have more packages that are delivered to your homes, especially this time of year.
So the data you track is American, but safe to assume if more people are shopping online here in Canada too, this kind of theft might be growing here as well?
Correct. Yeah, most of the data that we do have, which is limited, as I said, is American-based data, but the trends are probably very similar in Canada. So as increases of home delivery and then the value of what's in those packages increases, we expect to see and increasing the crime in most places.
And is it mainly thieves taking stuff where it's dropped off at our homes, or are packages going missing elsewhere too?
Well, this seems to be a growing crime all along the supply chain, if you will. So certainly we have porch pirates who are operating at an individual's home and taking packages that are left there for delivery. But we also are starting to see thieves who are getting a little more organized. They're either perhaps following delivery drivers and taking packages out of their truck, or in some cases the entire truck, and even moving further up and looking at some cargo theft for some trains and other areas as well. So all along the delivery route, as we see packages being traded, and on the way to your homes, we see thieves operating to try and steal those.
And what does it tell you that maybe this is becoming big business? Maybe it's becoming more organized, Professor Stickle?
Yeah, I think it's actually becoming more organized. And I think, again, thieves are looking at just the opportunity and in many cases the ease of actually committing these types of theft. So oftentimes there's not a lot of skill that's involved, and even a very low risk if you consider that and compare to trying to walk into a store and conceal something and take it in the traditional sense of the way. This does seem to be easier and perhaps even more lucrative.
Sounds like companies are probably pretty concerned about it, but how do they respond when they get a complaint that their package hasn't been delivered?
So generally right now, my experience is that retail companies are pretty open to sending another item or replacing it in some way. I think this has to do with trying to maintain customer loyalty, and a brand reputation. They want you to purchase their products again, and if you had something stolen, they're generally pretty good about shipping out a new one. But this certainly costs the company. So it's not like this is a zero-sum game where nobody loses. Somebody loses out. In this case, it might be the company, which may have a trickle-down effect on prices and a variety of other things.
So RCMP are advising several things, scheduling delivery times when you're at home, requesting a signature, maybe installing security cameras. The security cameras, do they actually deter porch thieves?
It doesn't seem from my research that they actually deter much package theft. In fact, the first study I did, we looked at videos of porch pirates in action, and multiple people would see the camera, they'd look at it, they'd look at the box, they'd take it anyway. And so I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a thief is already committed by the time they approach your front porch to take your package, and even a camera probably isn't going to deter them. So I don't know that that's going to be very helpful.
Ben Stickle is a professor of criminal justice at Middle Tennessee State University. He was speaking with CBC's Portia Clark. His advice for avoiding porch pirates: have your package delivered somewhere out of sight. Interesting problem at this time of year. We are 1 minute away from our local news at 8:30 with Heather Wells. I want to let you know that we are on CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. You can check us out. Jake McEnany said the tree looks awesome in the background. So that's the Christmas tree that is over my right shoulder here that you can see. I'll give a shout out to the camera and a wave. Good morning to you. So we are now on CBC's YouTube channel, and you can watch the show right from when we sign on at 5:57 till 8:37. And we're on the main network, of course, between 6 and 7 on television, but we're doing this YouTube thing, so we're making radio and TV. You can check us out. You can write in the chat, and you can actually say, I preferred you on radio where I didn't have to see you, maybe, if that's your take. But again, our CBC Manitoba YouTube page, check it out. And again, we're coming up to news time at 8:30. It is 1 in the downtown right now, on the way to a 5. We're going to be pretty messy tomorrow, and we'll be telling you about that in just a little bit. You're listening, I should say, to Information Radio. It's a good-looking morning out there, and the commute is dry. If you have anything to tell Abby about, Abby Adiemi, 788-3093 is the traffic and commuter line. Time right now is 8:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells. A man accused of killing 4 people in a Langside rooming house has a history of psychotic episodes. That's from court documents related to an unrelated assault charge against Jamie Randy Felix. Longtime friend Autumn Beardy says Felix has a seizure disorder and struggles with substance use, making his manic episodes, she says, even worse.
If he was in a manic or psychotic state, he'd become very transient, like losing touch with what meant something to him, like a stable home or keeping his job, or he couldn't have his brain was going too fast for him to properly communicate clearly.
Felix was charged last week with 4 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder in connection with the November 26th mass shooting in West Broadway. A Winnipeg man who went from living in a shack to a new apartment within days is grateful for the help he's received. Bill Paycheck built an elaborate shack next to Omans Creek near Polo Park. After CBC News reported his story, St. Boniface Street Links helped him find an apartment. Paycheck says his new place needed a few repairs, but he is feeling settled after living there for more than 2 weeks.
Everything's a transition for me. I always have a little trouble getting used to a new place, so I'm certainly feeling a lot more comfortable now.
Paycheck lost his job and housing because of health problems. Now he hopes to eventually move out to a farm where he can help others who have experienced homelessness start a new life. Even though the opposition is fierce, an overnight drop-in shelter in Brandon has been given the go-ahead to open. It will be in the International Gospel Christian Ministries in a residential area. Many people in that area spoke against the location at yesterday's meeting of the Brandon Planning Commission, many citing safety concerns. Adeline Jones lives near the shelter's new space.
I know they're trying to do a nice thing, but it's putting our property value down, and we know it. You know, and I know people need help, but when the businessmen downtown turn a shelter down, why would they put it in our residence?
Brandon Neighbourhood Renewal Corporation expects the shelter to open in about 2 weeks. Food prices are going to keep rising in 2024, according to the latest food price report. It predicts an increase of anywhere from 2 to 4.5%. That means a family of four can expect to spend about $700 more on food next year than they did this year. The report also points out, on average, Canadians had fewer restaurant meals last year compared to 2022. It expects to see that trend continue into the new year. After 6 rounds of voting, the Assembly of First Nations has yet to decide on a new national chief.
In this round, no candidate has reached the 60% required to become national chief, and another round of voting is required.
And with that, the special AFN leadership meeting in Ottawa came to a close last night. Delegates have narrowed the field down to 2 candidates, Cindy Woodhouse from Manitoba and David Pratt from Saskatchewan. So far, neither has been able to secure enough support to be declared winner. The 7th round of voting is scheduled to get underway at 10 this morning. The past few days have been met with a bit of amazement in southern Manitoba. 7 warm weather records were broken yesterday. Kyle McCauley at Environment Canada says the hottest spot in Manitoba yesterday was McCreary, soaring to 11.2 degrees, breaking a record set in 2015. And at 10.1 degrees, Deerwood also broke a record along with Carberry at 9.4. Well, Winnipeggers are doing something they rarely do in December.
December in Winnipeg. Who needs Mexico?
Hold on to that, Jim Malloy. Swinging his clubs yesterday at Shooter's Family Golf Center in Winnipeg. Shooters opened the driving range as the temperatures climbed to 6 degrees. Malloy was quick to dig out his clubs.
I was hoping to get 9 holes in today, but when I phoned, they said, no, just the driving range. I said, well, that'll do. It's December.
But all good things must end. An Alberta clipper reaches the province overnight, bringing with it snowfall warnings to parts of northwestern Manitoba and the Interlake. Get set for some snow and cold temperatures. Our next local news coming up at 9 o'clock, and you can stay in step with the news throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Put away that golf bag, Jim Malloy, because it could get filled with snow if you leave it outside of the garage. So that's what's on the way. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi is here to tell us a little bit more about that.
Should I bring out the snowblower now?
Well, you might need
shovel.
it by Saturday here in the city of Winnipeg. I think the shovel to start.
Okay, shovel.
It's going to be that heavy, wet stuff, too.
Okay, but currently, let's talk about today. Let's enjoy
it's
today.
so nice today.
Yeah. And, you know, I looked outside again, and it's like the sun is actually playing hide and seek with a cloud. It's like it was
look at that,
poking
a whole
out.
whack of more clouds just
Now,
moved into the downtown.
It just moved in. We're currently at 1. It's going to be mainly cloudy. That fog patches will be here and there. We're headed to a high of 5 today. Brandon is currently at -1. You get a mix of sun and cloud today. You head to a high of +5. Thompson is at -11, a high of -5 today. Churchill is at -3. Gimli is at -1. And then let's talk about the snowfall warning from Environment Canada. The southwest region of the province will definitely be getting about 10 to 15 centimeters expected by tomorrow morning, and this would be affecting your commute, so you need to prepare for that.
Especially the Parkland region, from Swan River right down to through the park and in that whole area. So it's going to be a messy one tomorrow, and really gusty winds too, Abby, 60 to 70 clicks.
60 to 70, exactly. So it's going to be blowing snow. Visibility will definitely reduce at some time.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi is in for me because I'm in for Marcy today and tomorrow. Thanks for joining us this morning at Information Radio. We appreciate it. Coming up on The Current, we're going to hear from a psychologist who says intentional acts of joy can improve our well-being. So we're going to hear about people who commit daily micro acts of joy. They experience a 25% increase in emotional well-being over the course of a week. Stay tuned for that. It's coming up in literally 10 seconds. Thanks for making us a part of your morning. Once again, you're listening to Information Radio. Have a fabulous Thursday, everybody.